Ag Show. Glad to have you. Really glad to have back the chair of the RNC. It is Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, how are you?
Wonderful. Great to be with you, Joe.
It's always an absolute pleasure to have you on. You know, we both have our roots in Michigan. And are you in Michigan now? You still live there, don't you?
I am. I'm still in the state of Michigan where we are under martial law. It's
right?
A police state here.
You know, I still pay taxes there. I've got a house in Michigan in the Saginaw County area. And I love it there. My wife was born there. One of my daughters was born there. We love Michigan, and Michigan did the right thing in 2016 in surprising the world by voting for President Donald Trump. And then you've got in the electoral, in the governmental election, the gubernatorial, I should say, we get Gretchen Whitmer. I've had Bill Schuette on a few times, and the people in Michigan tell me, Joe, he wasn't that strong a candidate. He didn't try very hard. He didn't campaign like she did. And maybe there's something to that. But generally speaking, when you've got a dictator in office now, you start to look back and say, why do we have somebody telling us what we can and can't buy at Walmart? If Walmart is open, we should buy whatever's on the shelves. And it turns out people there generally believe it's because marijuana legalization was on the ballot. Ronna, is that why Michigan fell into the hands of Gretchen Whitmer?
Well, I think there's a bunch of reasons. I think the Democrats woke up that Michigan was suddenly a state that was in play, and they put a lot of money in, and they ran a lot on pre-existing condition coverage, scaring voters, saying that Republicans would get rid of that, including Bill Schuette. And marijuana was a factor in especially those college towns in Michigan where the turnout was much higher than it was in 2016.
Why do people want to smoke pot so badly that they would vote somebody in who's horrible? I mean, this is a person who took office and said she wanted to fix the roads by raising the gas tax by 45 cents a gallon on people who are blue-collar workers. It made no sense. And then we can't use hydroxychloroquine. I might actually sanction doctors who prescribe it. And now, yes, we'll open Walmart, but you can't buy grass seed. And as you know, this is the time of year that you put the seed down. And you can go boating if you want, just not with a motor. What are we talking about here, Ronna? This is so weird.
It's crazy. Well, let me just put it in perspective also. You can't mow your grass, but you can smoke it. She's deemed recreational pot as one of the essential businesses. You can go buy a lottery ticket, but you can't go buy a car seat. I mean, her orders have been very confusing, very frustrating. And there are a lot of businesses in Michigan who are protesting because they're afraid. And they say, you know what, there is a way for me to run my business safely. They don't want to not use the social distancing measures and put anybody in harm's way, but they're saying, give us the ability to run our business in a safe way and treat us like adults and make sure that we don't lose our livelihood while we're trying to save lives.
Well, I'll one-up you on what it is that she's banning and what she isn't banning. You can't get hip replacement surgery, which is really necessary, but you can get an abortion because she just said this the other day. Abortion is somehow life-preserving. What? What are we talking about here? There's such a disconnection.
It's very frustrating, and frankly, I've had 2 aunts diagnosed with breast cancer this year.
Sorry
I can't get my mammogram. I've been delayed 2 months. I think that's life saving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And then she says an abortion. And then she says an abortion is life saving. It's very arbitrary, and she's favoring her constituencies, people who supported her campaign. And beyond that, she's not willing to listen to the people who are suffering. And I think that's what's so shameful. You know what? Yeah. Don't just demean them and say you're deplorable and, you're not of my political beliefs. You're the governor for everyone right now, and we are one of the states with the highest unemployment in the country. Yeah. Take some time, listen to the people, hear why they're hurting, and see if there's a way you can help them.
And instead of listening to the protest the other day, she said that was just a planned Trump rally. I'm telling you, she's disconnected, and Michigan is kicking itself in the collective rear end for electing her. It's Ronna McDaniel. She, of course, the RNC chair. We appreciate the time. So let's expand from Michigan on to the rest of the country. With Nancy Pelosi pulling the games that she's pulling, she delayed the $2.2 trillion by a week because she got into Chuck Schumer's ear. And now she's convening a panel to investigate the reaction and response to coronavirus, which is ridiculous and sick. As you know, and as my listeners know, the left was busy buying these special pens that were made to sign the impeachment documents when coronavirus was starting to come to fruition. Instead of focusing on that, they focused on trying to get rid of a president who was duly elected. Is there going to be hell to pay in November, do you think? Because, Ronna, I'm getting scared that people are not listening to or not looking at the writing on the wall, that the Democrats have slowed down their payments. They've actually focused on getting rid of a president duly elected instead of the business of the people. But these polls don't seem to show that Democrats are suffering. Help me out here.
Well, I do think that there is a very dishonest media narrative out there right now that is not sharing the facts of what the Trump administration has done. And when you look at the facts we're putting forward, if you look at what Congressman Dan Crenshaw just did from Texas, the 5-minute video that refutes what the Democrats are putting out, that is what the grassroots army of Trump volunteers and the RNC is going to work at, because it is true that the president halted travel to China early on in January, where Democrats were calling him racist and xenophobic. And it's true that Dr. Fauci has said that absolutely saved lives. And the list goes on and on and on of things that the president did in real time to help us weather this crisis. And Democrats, time and time again, have become roadblocks into getting aid to the American people and the American worker.
And the payroll protection program, that's run out of money, and still they're playing games. They're dragging their feet. There are people that will no longer be that will no longer be connected with their employer if this money doesn't come through to protect those payrolls. Can you think of any reason why they would play this game? And by the way, the Washington Post and New York Times all had real headlines at first. The Democrats got to them, and they changed the headline. Instead of saying the Democrats were dragging their feet and delaying it, now suddenly Republicans are playing games. So what do they gain by dragging their feet? I don't get it.
I don't know what they're gaining. I've talked to so many people who have told me I have one more month to survive. I mean, let's not forget, people are being asked to shutter their doors and close their businesses for the sake of their fellow citizens. They are abiding by the guidance given to them by our government. And then for our government, for Democrats to not turn around and say, here, we're going to help you get through these 2 months and give you the ability to keep people on your payroll, keep people employed, it's just shameful. And it is 100% the Democrats who are doing this. The Republicans were ready to go. They wanted to put a clean bill through, but Nancy Pelosi won't let a clean bill through unless she gets her partisan wish list somehow attached to it.
When the Democrats, and again, it's the RNC Chair, Ronna McDaniel, we always appreciate the time. When the Democrats dragged their feet, and then once they said okay to the CARES Act, they wanted airplane emissions in there. They wanted solar power in there. They wanted wind power in there. They wanted money for every pet project they can think of. I mean, I don't know that the media really informed people what they were asking for. We try to on my show and other shows like mine. You're trying to. Brad Parscale from the campaign is trying to. But I don't know that we're getting through this media logjam. I mean, they are purposely misleading the people, as you said. How do we defeat that? How do we come out on top of that and say, whoa, wait, look at what they wanted. Look at the garbage they added to this. Look at how they delayed the money to you. Look at how they're playing games with impeachment and the Mueller report and all this other stuff. How do we really drive that message home other than what we're doing? Can we sift through the social media and the big media blockages?
Well, one is going to local media outlets, which we're doing all the time. I'm doing radio across the country. We're doing TV and local media outlets because they're more fair, and actually more people watch local media because that's where they get their weather and their traffic and all the things that matter to them close to home. The other is we've turned our entire operation into a virtual operation, and just since this has started, we've contacted millions and millions of voters. We've now hit 17 million voter contacts, and we're giving them the truth about what's happening, and you'll see more and more of that ramping up as we go forward because the timeline of facts does not lie. Nancy Pelosi was having an impeachment pen party while the president was closing travel to China. That is a fact.
And
he declared it a public health emergency while she was in Chinatown promoting tourism. So we can go back and we can litigate the facts. And right now that's not being done because we're in a crisis. But when push comes to shove, people will see it was the president who delivered. And he's the one who engaged the private sector and said, enough is enough. We've got to get this testing ramped up and the PPE because the bureaucracy that was in place for decades under several presidents was not prepared for the crisis that hit our shores. And this president was nimble in figuring out a way to put a whole of America approach together. And that's why we are where we are with more tests being done in the United States than any other country.
It's Ronna McDaniel. She's the RNC chair. We always enjoy the time and the access. Thank you. Let me make a comparison historically. Now, the left can gaslight people all they want, and they're doing that, and they're doing it very successfully by pretending like the past didn't really happen and Obama somehow predicted this pandemic and everything else. The truth of the matter is he had H1N1. He had swine flu, and he reacted badly. We had 1,400 dead Americans before he did anything and declared an emergency, before he asked Congress for any money. He was actually golfing the day that he declared the emergency. This president, conversely, as you said, shut down travel from China quickly, shut down travel from Europe rather quickly as well. Also, I started getting information out there immediately and told the states, I'm here to help you if you need help. We have federalism. States should take care of themselves, but if you need help, we're here to help you. Ronna, this guy is tirelessly 7 days a week done a news conference between an hour and 4 hours long where he takes the dumbest questions I've ever heard from the media. He's been incredibly transparent. And instead of getting at least just let the media take a breath for a second and say, look, at least he's getting the information out there. No, they're attacking him for doing the press conferences. And you know what would happen if he didn't do the press conferences. He's not being transparent. Why isn't he doing them? So how does he win? Is it all about just focus on the American people, millions of whom are watching these news conferences every day, and sort of shut out the noise?
Well, I think the president's always put his faith in the American people.
Yeah.
And he recognized early on that they can see through the media. And there's nobody who has brought more attention and more light to the dishonesty of the media than President Trump. And they don't even try to hide their bias anymore. They don't even try. It's on full display every night. That's why the viewership's down. And that's why people are turning to alternate sources like your radio show, like what we're putting out online. And that's going to have more of an impact. But people can see that this is a president who's working hard, as are our men and women on the front lines in the hospitals, as are so many people who are trying to get us through this crisis. And it's sad that when the greatness of our country is usually coming together in a crisis, we see Democrats already trying to point the blame, start investigations, and do these terrible things in a time where we should all be coming together for the betterment of our country. And they haven't done that since Donald Trump's been in office, and it's just shameful. It
is. We should be coming together. This should be like a post-9/11 thing to where we're all Americans now, and we can worry about politics down the road. One last question with Ronna McDaniel, the RNC chair, and we appreciate the time and the access. Heading into November, like we were all surprised in 2018 in the midterm, I was surprised that the Senate gained seats for the Republicans. Very good job on the Senate side. I hated to see what happened on the House side because I don't think that many of those running for office really put their nose to the grindstone and went out there and got the message out. And the Democrats outworked them in individual districts. Can we get the House back in November? And how do you feel about the president's chances?
We absolutely can win the House back in November, and I've got to credit Kevin McCarthy because so much of it starts with candidate recruitment.
Yeah.
And who are you getting to run, and do they have that fire in the belly, and do they connect with voters? And they have done a phenomenal job on the House side recruiting great candidates, and in Texas, great candidates, in Michigan, all across the country.
Yeah.
And we have a special election on May 12th in California. And the president will win again, but it's going to be a tough battle. This is going to be us against the media, against Hollywood, the elites in our country who want to tell us and dictate to us who we should elect, rather than who's going to do the best job for the American worker and the average American person.
Well, I know this. The president thanks you every time he was doing these rallies before coronavirus, obviously, because it's well given praise. You're doing an amazing job with the RNC, and I hope that we can get that. And by the way, I'm a conservative, not necessarily a Republican, but we work hand in hand. I want to see more conservative, traditional American values in the House of Representatives. I think Nancy Pelosi and Jerry Nadler and all these people have proven what they will do when they have power, and it's nothing for the American people.
It's nothing. And to see her staying in her mansion in San Francisco when we had the Paycheck Protection Program run out, when businesses just lost their lifeline, and she's not willing to even fly back to D.C. to work this out, just shows where her priorities are.
I couldn't agree more. Ronna McDaniel, thank you so much, Ronna. I appreciate you.